The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present. Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio. Episode of Positive Talk Radio, and I hope that you're going to relax and enjoy the next hour, because I've got one of my favorite people that I've had on in quite some time. He has got a plethora or a placenta of information around him. He is, I'm sorry, I stole that joke from you.
And I got that from Cindy Hollis, who has a payroll place in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and she referred to me as a placenta of information.
Well, if you think about that in a kind of a weird way, that's kind of true, because you're the filter of all things, and you hold nourishment for everyone, and all, you know what I mean? So,
oh man, I'm never going to hear. I hope you're happy, Cindy. You're now more famous and that was very skilled, Kevin, that you were able to pull all that out from that placenta comment.
Oh, this is going to be fun. I can tell you right now. G. Scott Graham is my guest, and he's an author of 17 billion books, and he
a lot
on a lot of and very diverse topics. Lots of different things that he talks about. And he refers to himself. He's also a coach, and he works with people. He's a career coach and a business coach. He lives in Boston, Massachusetts, which is the home of the hated New England Patriots. But that's a story for another time.
Yes.
I mean, especially if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan like me, who gets beat up by those guys all the time. And so we've got, he's got, let's see, there's two. How many books have you written in total?
I'm working on my 16th one, which is coming out at the end of the month, on business, early warning signals for business. And so that one is just on the pipeline. It'll be out in about 2 weeks.
Oh, cool. So early warnings for business, as far as warning, Will Robinson, warning, you're about to fail kind of thing?
That's kind of like that piece. So I liken it to the engine warning light of your car. You know, most people start, especially here in the pandemic, everybody's out starting their own business, right? And you wake up one day and you're like, what the heck happened? Where did all the money go? My bookkeeper took it all. Or how did I end up getting in this situation? Or, my business partner got arrested for porn on his computer or something like that, right? It goes on and on and on. It's like, so the book takes the terminology and strategies that we see from weather and climate monitors and takes it and applies it to a business sense. So in weather, there's hazards, a lot of rain, fire, earthquakes, tornadoes, those types of things. And so you got to know what the hazards are that are out there and be watching for them. But at the same time, some businesses are more vulnerable to certain hazards than others. Just like, in California, you're more vulnerable to earthquakes than people in Boston or Vermont. You're more vulnerable to flooding if you live right in, on the floodplain in Florida than you are if you live in the mountains of Tennessee. So just like that, a great example is COVID. COVID-19 was a hazard that nobody thought about. And for some businesses, it was horrible. Restaurants were incredibly vulnerable to that hazard.
I don't know how
Other
they survive.
businesses, yeah, other businesses did backflips, right? Zoom, WebEx, they were like the Zoom and WebEx to COVID were like sandbag manufacturers to the hurricane in Louisiana. When the waters were rising, everybody was scrambling, but the sandbag manufacturers were like, woohoo, right? I mean, they probably weren't doing that, but anyway.
Well, but
Um,
in some of those cases, their stock went through the roof, their
yeah,
usage went up. Netflix did really well and for a while and stuff because people had nothing to do except sit there and binge watch on TV and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
yeah, so and
So it's coming out in 2 weeks.
perfect. Well, and I'll give you another example, and this is one that I'm sure you've thought of, but in my world,
Uh-huh.
because I have a little company, and
Uh-huh.
when I mean little, I mean really monumentally little. The thing it's got like got one person working with me, kind of thing, and but the problem is that because it's a media company and I do podcasts, I do a lot of podcasts. I also have a radio show, which I'd like to have you on KKNW in Seattle.
That'd be
I think
great.
we have a great time doing that. And but because of that, people have delusions of grandeur of what they can do, and they want to come and, oh, I would love to work with you and I'd love to do, but it's all kind of tainted because they've got this underlying motive, you see.
Right.
Because
Right. That's
they
very
want
true.
they want to be famous, and they say, well, you've got a podcast, you've been downloaded over 75,000 times, you're a going concern, I want to be part of what you, and then they try and take it over, they try and sabotage it, they don't, so it's very, very difficult to find people that are pure of heart that are really interested in, because what I do is it's a mission. I do
Hmm.
positive talk because I want to really make a positive difference in the world.
Right. You've got
And
a message to send out to folks. You're making change happen
yes,
in a great way.
I'm working my little tail off to try and get that done, and when but there are people that are willing to sabotage that for their own selfish best interest. How do you combat that?
Oh man, that is a tough. That's more than a hazard, right? Uh,
It's
you
more
can
than a bump
avoid.
in the road, too.
Right. You can put up sandbags to keep the water out. There's not. I mean, this is a little bit more aggressive than just some event that comes by your way. Although a lot of the hazards, like I talked about, you see over and over again. People don't pay attention to their books, and bookkeepers start off, going for an occasional trip to Dairy Queen and getting some ice cream cones, and then the next thing you know, there's an iPhone for their son and their daughter and this person and a rental car, and you're like, well, I trusted this person, how did that happen? um, it happens a lot, because you know what the reality is, the only people that want to start a business to be forensic accountants are forensic accountants. um, you
It's so true.
That's so true, right? The somebody who is in the who's an electrician, or somebody who's is like, oh my god, books. I don't book. They bring in a garbage bag of receipts, right? Because that's their filing system. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so you're vulnerable when you're that way.
it's really hard if you are the world's best plumber, but you can't add numbers and you can't see and you don't monitor your checkbook and monitor what's going out and what's coming in and where the money's going because you're
Right.
trusting somebody, and then the next thing you know, you have no money and you can't make payroll.
Right, right. Yeah. So this book works people through this process so they can look through and identify their own vulnerabilities, the biggest hazards, and then come up with essentially a early warning system, the engine light on their car, right? The engine light just says something's wrong here. Doesn't tell you what it is. You got to take it to a mechanic, but it just says something's wrong. Or the tire pressure monitor doesn't tell you whether you got a flat or whether you just got a slow leak. It just comes on and says something's wrong. Doesn't even tell you necessarily which tire, at least not in my car.
Not in my
Um,
car either.
and so, though, that's kind of what this book's about, to just help people figure that out and plot that out so that you don't get caught. So you don't get caught with your pants down, right? Oh man, what a mistake.
Figuratively or literally?
Figuratively or literally. Yes, that would be a big vulnerability.
It's a great way to lose a business, having your
Yeah,
pants down on Main Street. Um,
right.
but we were going to talk about, and you've got so many books. You've got books about marijuana. You've got making your own superpower or superhero power. But I wanted to talk
What is
about
the
a little
marijuana
bit,
book?
yeah,
Yeah.
about let's see if I can pronounce it again correctly. Androphile pride.
Oh
Androphile.
yeah. There you got it right. That's
Hey,
it. Here we go. Like a
how about
magic trick. Watch. Boop, 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 boop. There we
that's
go. Look at that. There it is right there.
that's the one. Now, what is this particular writing about?
Well, you're probably going to be shocked when I say this to you, Kevin, but all my books have an attitude about something. It's not like, the history of algebra that I'm doing a book on. They all have a very strong specific focus and opinion, right? Like, my marijuana book's very particular and critical about the current public health approach to marijuana and how screwy it's going to be, as you remember from the last call that we did, or last podcast we did.
Oh, before we go on, I just kind of want to. I just booked a guest who was suffering depression, and then he found magic mushrooms, and so I don't know if you know anything about that, but that's going to be another show that I do, which
That
will be very very interesting. I know nothing about magic mushrooms, so but anyway, so we're talking about pride.
Yeah, so we're talking about this book, Androphile Pride. There we go. I'm going to set it down. And the the piece that brought this book to my fray, or my view, or my concern, was really what we see in the gay community. And this is really a travesty, in my opinion. And this is what prompted me to write this book. There are tens of thousands of gay men. I'm only going to talk about gay men here, but I mean, you could apply this with lesbians and other folks. But in this book context, I'm talking about gay men. They struggle, they don't find acceptance, and they come out of the closet and they reach out to the gay community, and very quickly this kind of orientation process happens where these guys learn this is what it means to be a good gay guy. And that means that, everything from the mild stuff like what kind of vodka you should drink, what kind of underwear you should wear, what kind of body you should have, what kind of music you should listen to, your politics in a very, pushy leftist kind of way. And this is not anything against the left here, but it becomes almost this piece of if you don't agree with us, then there is something wrong with you. And there's no room of acceptance for these folks out there. That's kind
Now,
of the nexus of this whole thing.
I don't understand that because a lot of gay men have lived their whole lives not being accepted. So you would
Exactly.
think they would be very accepting of other people because that's what they've had to deal with their whole life.
Exactly. But in the gay community, you see pushback around this stuff, and you see people label people who disagree with the party line as having internalized homophobia. In fact, there is a psychological assessment. And one of the criteria in this psychological assessment on internalized homophobia, which is, I hate myself because I'm gay. One of the questions is I am critical of leadership in the gay and lesbian community. That pretty much says it right there, doesn't it?
It does.
If I'm critical of leadership in the gay and lesbian community, that's a sign that there's probably some internalized homophobia for you to work out. And so I'm not the first to recognize this. There was a guy many years ago, not many, I mean, in my world, many years ago, like 10, 15 years ago, he recognized this. I know it's not 100 years ago. He recognized this piece, and he wrote a book called Androphilia, a Manifesto. And the book was just right in line with, you need to be your own man. No one should define who you are. You need to, find your own path. And then this guy shortly afterwards went totally off the rails, in terms of, it turns out that he was, this kind of racist, bigot, you know, very filled with hate, anti-Semitic person. And so for all of his pieces of, you need to follow your own path, uh, he then took everybody on this alternative place and was like, well, you need to believe what I believe, which the real man does this, and women are this, and women should be at home, and this. I mean, a whole bunch of other stuff that he spewed out after this. So this book that I wrote is really an antidote to his book, which is really an antidote to the big problem of the gay community being judgmental in the first place. I'm hoping the people that seek out his book see my book. And what my book says at one point is, I can't even know where this is, where I was so clear about who you are and what you are. And I put, you need to be your own person. And that means you are not the person that the gay community says you need to be. You're not the person that you're proud of who you are. You need to do what you want to do, and it doesn't matter what the gay community thinks. It doesn't matter what this guy who wrote the original belief book about this thinks. It doesn't matter what I think. You need to do what's right for you. Geez, we have so many people telling us do this, do that, do this, do this, do that. It's crazy.
Well,
You got to find your own path.
Well, I would think, since you're walking your own path with what you're not following the norms or while following what everybody else is doing. So now I'm not in the gay community, so I wouldn't know um, what the motivation is of why they want to stereotype people and keep them all in the same herd. Why do they want to keep them down or not allow people to express themselves fully and completely to what makes them happy?
I think it becomes this piece of, strange bedfellows and political gains.
Oh,
So you need to, you better be. I'll give you a great example. There's a lot of, if you are pro-life, if you're gay and pro-life, if you're a lesbian and pro-life, it's even worse. But I'm only going to talk about being gay and pro-life because But if you're gay and pro-life, um, that's looked at as, you're not connected with us, right? You're anti-women, you're anti-feminist. That means you're probably got other issues. If you're gay and you have a concern, which I would, in the book, I hold it out as there's a valid concern about like effeminate gay men, because people are like, that's not me. That's not, I don't, I don't need to call everybody and their brother honey this and sweetie that, and, you know, um, flit down the stairs, and, and it is true that some gay men, I have a friend, his name is also Scott. He does not know the difference between a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver. He doesn't. And
he
and
doesn't want to learn.
he doesn't want to learn, because he'd rather have a hunky guy come and do the screwing for him. Oh, that came out wrong.
That,
That
that was a
do
metaphor.
do the sorry, Scott. Um, uh, but anyway, that's okay. It's okay for him to not understand the difference between a flathead and a Phillips head screwdriver. Um, but when that starts to become the piece of, well, this is the norm and this is how other gay men are, and for someone to say, no, that's not me, and step it up or knock it off, and then for those folks to get pushback and resistance, that's where it becomes problematic. And it's encompassed, it's grown beyond that. There are gay men out there who say, you know what, I understand transgender rights. I understand and I get it. I understand transgender rights, but that has nothing to do with me, because I think I'm the right gender. I mean, I'm
Right.
compassionate to that, just like I'm compassionate to Black Lives Matter. But once it used to be when I was in college, I was in the Gay and Lesbian Coalition. And then while I was there, I was the president, we expanded it to the Gay, Lesbian, and Bisexual Coalition. Now there's like 15 letters after it. It goes, GLBTQI. In fact, I have to tell you, this is if you're interested in this book, get the audiobook. I can't tell you how many interviews I had to go through to get somebody who could say the whole acronym over and over. That was the audition piece, because an acronym is LGBTQIAPK. And so I don't even know what that means either. But in saying it, I would refer to that person as with an ER at the end. Like I work on a farm, so I'm a farmer. And so I added the ER to the LGBTQIAPKER. And that was actually the audio interview. You're going to see somebody say, yeah, this one guy said, I've practiced this for 15 hours in order to get this job. He's like, LGBTQ. And I'm like, wow, that was really good. How did you manage to say LGBTQIAPKER? He's like, I really had to practice that. My wife thought I was really creepy as I'm staring in the mirror doing it. But he did a good job, so he got the book. So he did the audiobook for me. It's really nice.
Oh, very good. And you can find that on Amazon and everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's on Audible. It's not it's Audible.
It's on the Audible
that this is on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can get it off of Amazon too. I'm particularly, poignant about, and I said this to somebody, they were like, what? I said, you know what? RuPaul is the Uncle Remus of our age. And they're like, what does that mean? You could say that. Go ahead, say, I'm doing the Kevin part. I'm not even giving you a chance. Why don't you just say, Kevin, what does that mean, Scott?
No, you're doing fine. You can interview yourself. It's like I don't know. Hey, what? No, you're doing great.
For the next show, you can just like put me on the screen and say, I'm Kevin McDonald. I'll be back in an hour after Scott shuts up.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is I really enjoy your sense of humor. You have a lot of great things to say, and me as an interviewer, it's like, look, if this is good content, I don't need to say a damn thing. I just wind you up and go.
And I'm already wound up, so you just have to wind me up. I'm like a monkey, one of those monkey things with that claps their hands.
Tambourines. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you. So why, in the book, what do you attribute it to? Why is there this desire that everybody toe the line and do it a certain way, when I wouldn't have thought that that's even a consideration, because I know a lot of gay men that are free spirits, and they have different attitudes, different thoughts, and they're across the spectrum. But why is that?
I think it's divisive to the political agenda. Just like when you hear, an outlier of the mainstream Black agenda that comes out there, then someone's like, oh, but you know what? They never turn to the outlier of the mainstream Black agenda and say, you know what, you're screwed up. You need therapy as a Black man or a Black woman because,
Well, do you remember a movie called Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex? Woody Allen did it way back when. And at one point he was treating it, this guy was having sex, and all the sperm were all dressed in white, and they were in the hold of the and there was one Black guy, and it was like a Donald Trump convention. It's like there's the one Black guy was, what am I doing here? What am I doing? And it was all.
Oh, is that? I thought you meant it was like a Donald Trump convention because it was all sperm. But it was the white black comparison that you're doing.
Yeah,
okay, now I got it.
The white black thing, but so that's, I guess.
Oh, we're gonna get hate mail.
That is G. Scott.
You can find me on the internet. Just Google G. Scott Graham.
at .com, by the way.
Yes.
GScottGraham.com. But we do the same thing, because if, as an example, as a Black man, you're expected to be a Democrat and to follow the Democratic Party and the Democratic line and all that kind of stuff, rather than be free to be who you are.
You're right.
And I guess the gay agenda is the same thing, because you're looking, and I get it. They want to improve the rights, and which I think is sorely needs to be done. I think people are people, and we should just leave the rest of that. It doesn't matter. But I guess are they super sensitive to that?
Yeah, I think that it's a big piece. If you but see, the big difference is that the black community or the Hispanic community or whatever the community is, that they put pressure on you to conform, right? Like
Yes.
you just said, black Democrat. You your psychological health isn't called into question. You're not labeled as some person who needs extensive therapy because you're just messed up. I think the added thing that happens in the gay community is that there is a time for all of the GLDDPQRCessers that are out there, where you weren't that way, where you were, I was, until I came out of the closet, everybody thought Scott was straight. And
Right.
I acted that way, and there was this device, this dividing line that said, okay, here's where this shifted, and here's where this moves on. And there's a piece now, especially in this kind of internet focused place, where you'd think people would be, boy, we're so liberated. I actually think people are actually more held down, and there's a lot more shame, because you can easily go on to apps like Grinder and get laid if you're married, and get laid in secret. That makes it really easy for people who are struggling, like I was before I came out, to just check things out from the comfort of their own couch. But because of that dividing line, it's easy for someone to say, well, you haven't evolved as fully as you should have,
Oh, brother.
in your own psycho babble wackadoodle whatever.
Now I got to ask you, because I think it's important to somebody who's listening to this podcast who is struggling with that issue. Because how old were you when you came out?
I graduated from high school. You're going to find this crazy, but I graduated from high school early. So I started college when I was 17. And
That's why you've written so many
so
books.
I
You're
read
a
so
smart
many
guy.
books. And I came out shortly after that. And it was a bumpy ride, because I was raised Catholic.
Oh
And
God.
it, and then, you want to hear my coming out story?
Sure.
Oh boy. So I went to, like a good Catholic, instead of going and talking to, I don't know, the Catholic mentor or this, I went to see a priest.
Oh no.
And oh yeah, it gets better. It gets better. So I just didn't make an appointment to go see a priest like on a Friday morning or a Saturday afternoon. I went to confession to talk to the priest about this issue. Right, it's already setting the stage of like drama and stuff like that. And I write about this in the book, about what a big transformative piece it was, and where it was, I could feel my, there are these times in your life, and I bet your readers or your listeners and viewers know this. Yeah, I know you're not readers, although maybe anyway. And, but there's these times in your life where you get these glimmers where you can just actually feel the shift, like
Yep.
right here, and it's like, oh. And that was one of the times when I went to confession, and I spilled my guts out to this priest, and he was not a very attractive priest at all, at all. Um, and he looked at me and he said, you know, this was in the 80s. This was in the 1980s. Put this in context right here. AIDS crisis,
Yep.
Ronald Reagan, lots of, there was nothing that was legal. I remember coming out after a few years after that, coming out of the mall, and people followed me out with a pair of brass knuckles and put a dent in my pickup truck.
Oh
Um,
jeez.
and so I talked to my father, and he's like, "You got to carry a baseball bat in your car." And so I carried a baseball bat in my car after that. But So I went to talk to the priest in confession, right? And at that time, I don't know if the Catholic Church still does that. You could walk around and do face to face. So I wasn't on my knees praying. I walked around. I talked to the priest and told him this piece. And I'm gay. And he said, after a long pause, he said, basically, he gave me the line of like, Christ loves the sinner but hates the sin, right? And I'm like, now remember, like I'm 17 or 18, right? My hormones are like bing, 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 bing,
Gone
right?
crazy, baby.
And he looks at me and says, and I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? And he says again, it's God loves you for who you are. He just doesn't love what you do. And I said, I what is that supposed to mean? He said, you know, it's okay that you're gay. You just can't act upon it. And I'm like, I'm like clicking it out. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? He's like, you need to be celibate, right? I'm bing, 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 bing. I'm like, what? What?
My mother told me the very same exact thing. And I said, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So you are condemning a segment of our society to a loveless life because you don't like who it is that they love? Well, no, it's that God doesn't like who it is. God
Yes.
made him exactly the way he is. Knock it off. She didn't like me after that.
So he said, so I popped right off on him and was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. How am I supposed to do that? That's impossible, right? I'm like, bing, 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 bing. I'm 17, right? I'm locked alone in the bathroom for 5 times a day. I'm 17. And so the priest looks at me and says, I'm celibate, right? And this is going in my blood's going like this, right? He's like, I'm celibate. And he said, we all have our crosses to bear. And that just set me over the roof. I stood up right there, and this is that point where I could feel like the innards kind of shifting. I looked at him and I said, with lots of profanity, using the F word, I'm like, first of all, you're an effing priest, and you're ugly, and you made a choice to be this way. I didn't choose to be this way. This is just bullshit. And then I walked out. And then the next week my mom's like, how come you're not going to church anymore? I'm like, I don't know. She knew,
Well,
but I was like, but that was a big, shift. It was the 80s was a very judgmental, harsh time. I mean, it was harsher before that, but
oh
I
yeah.
mean, oh
Well,
man,
and I don't mean we don't mean to be bashing the Catholic Church, but I did an interview earlier today involving a man that was sexually abused by priests when he was 5, and so that's also going to be coming out. So look for that on
right,
positivetalkradio.net.
right.
Um,
The unfortunate thing is that that a lot of folks like really blame the Catholic Church for these people that are priests there, and I'm not condoning this when I say this at all. But if you were single and a man and in your 30s or 40s, people were like watching you. It was not acceptable for you to be, single and a man living alone, let alone a man living with another man. And so where could, those men who were not interested in marrying women go and not get a heap ton of grief from the community? Get a Catholic Church. Like that's like the perfect, you know.
Oh, it's absolutely, and it draws people that sometimes have nefarious aims, because they can hide in and amongst the sheep, and
Yeah.
and be able to do whatever they want. I'm a little older than you, so I remember in the '60s when I was just a kid, my grandmother lived in a mobile home next to Dick and Harry. And they were men in their, I would guess, in their 50s. And I
Hmm.
remember my folks having a discussion with my grandma with about them. And they're nice guys, and they take care of the house. And then, well, they must have had their wives must have died, or they must be widowers or something. It never crossed their mind that it was anything other than that. But they seemed to be. As it turns out, they had been together for like 40 years. They
Wow, that's
so
amazing.
yeah, it really was.
That's amazing.
It really was. And so I guess, Scott, I guess it's that people are people, and they're going to come up with, it doesn't matter who you love or what you're talking, then people are going to come up with weird shit to do all the time.
That is so true. That is so true. That yeah, people and people are going to come up with weird ways to try to keep people in check,
Exactly.
right? You see,
Exactly.
you see people that are just, people separated from a river. The people on this side of the river don't like those people on that side of the river. So
Ex-
let's go invade the Ukraine because that's the way to do it, right? It's like, how is this, what's the difference? We're all human beings, and we just get so wrapped up into this piece of you have to be this way, or you have to believe this, or you have to walk that way. It's
and
really
like
unfortunate.
Well, it's like I said before, because the kids today, they have a wholly different attitude about things like race and
Right,
things like gender identity and that sort
right.
of thing.
Yeah,
They're much more open to it. So that's why I believe in, and I'll get mail for this. I've said it before. That's why people get old and die, because the new kids will come up and they're a little bit wiser than we are, and
yeah.
they don't have the preconceived notions or the prejudices that we have brought forward from the 60s and 70s and stuff. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
that's the tide. Every time someone's like criticizing the government or this, I'm like, the tide's going to change because we're all going to die. And then, like you see in the statistics, uh, the the people who are white in this world are smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. 30 years from now, what's going to happen there, right? And there's no changing that. That's just the future as it's shifting.
And sadly, it's not. They're not going to go quietly into the night. It's
No,
because they're scared. They're
yeah,
very scared that they're losing their whatever it is they think they have, which they don't really have anyway.
yeah. So one last thing about this book. If you get this
Yes.
book, if
Yes.
somebody goes and gets this book, there is a number of so I just want to show you. So this book is this much of the book this is the book. This much of the book is about information, and all this rest of the book is about developing your own identity, getting a journal, figuring out who you are. There's a bunch of exercises, and if somebody gets this book, and because you mentioned I'm a coach, somebody gets this book and does all the exercises and sends it to me, I will give them a free coaching session.
Cool.
So because I think it's really important for people to kind of take this information that they figure out about themselves and come up with a way to integrate it, to make themselves vested in it, and then move forward with it. It's not just a intellectual exercise. It's really an exercise about change.
And information is power.
Hmm.
And the more
If you
that you
use
know,
it, if
if
you
you
use
use it
it.
correctly. Yeah, and it's important. It really is. So, and speaking of which, I'm just going to throw another book at you and see if you can even remember writing it, since you've written so many.
Okay.
Um, Early warning signals. What's that about?
Do you not remember us talking about this at the beginning of the show?
Hell no, that was almost 40 minutes ago. Is
Uh,
that that's the one that's coming out?
that's the one that's coming out.
Oh, but it's already on your website. See, I'm not used to people actually keeping up their website.
No, it's up on my website. It's available for pre-order at Amazon. And so that's that piece. You'll have to pick out another book and say, what's that about?
Okay.
Or I can just randomly go and pick out some book.
I know. I love your titles, by the way, on some of them, because they're uh, get off my lawn. No, get off your ass and mow the grass. What's that one about?
Oh my gosh. Where is this? Where is it? It's right. Oh, this is it right here. We go. Here's another one. Ready? Magic trick. Look at that. Get off your ass and mow the grass.
That's a catchy title right there. You could
That's
that could be a song title.
so this book I actually wrote this book when I was really, I remember being really frustrated at a person who is, I mean, overweight and being obese is an epidemic here in the United States. And so this was directed mainly at people who have little postage stamp size lawns and riding mowers for those little postage stamp size lawns. And so the whole premise of the book is sell your riding lawnmower, get a push mower, and take the difference between the really expensive spinning around riding mower and the little baby push mower and invest it in health coaching or personal training or something like that. You don't need to join the gym because you're pushing your way to health. It's the book is very critical of we have become such a pathetic, myself included, pathetically sedentary society, right? I mean, I I can't say the word because if I say Alexa, she's going to be like, "What do you want to do?" But I've got a number of those devices, and it now I just say her name and then say, "Turn on the television," and I don't even have to pick up the remote. She turns on the television. I can be in bed sleeping and the alarm goes off and I say her name, turn off the alarm. I don't even have to move. I can just stay there like that. That is really pathetic. Um, that's where we have become to. I mean, it's a great convenience piece, but there was a time when we had to grow our food and not just pop it in the microwave. There was a time when we had to walk. Your parents were like, "Oh, I had to walk to school in the snow and the da, 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 da." But that was
Uphill both
really true,
ways.
right?
Yeah, it was.
And so we are now in this, sit down here. We push a button and our car starts with heated seats and all kinds of other stuff. And then we're like, why are we all gaining weight? I got to join the gym. And so the premise of this book is you don't have to join the gym. You just have to do the stuff that you used to do, right? One of the gyms, I'm in New England, and I can tell you one of the gyms that we have in New England, and it's totally free to join, is heat your house with a wood stove. If you heat your house with a wood stove in New England, you don't have to join a gym because you are bending down and picking up the wood and setting it over here, and bending down and picking up the wood and setting it over here, and carrying the wood from over there to over here. In, in fact, one of the goals of a tried and true New Englander is to touch that wood as little as possible. Right, the more times you touch that, and they'll say, it heats you 3 times. It heats you when you're cutting it. It heats you when you're stacking it, and it heats you when you're burning it in the wood stove. And it's true, right? You're out there, it's freezing cold, November weather, and you're out there in shorts and a t-shirt stacking the wood for the.
Well, and you get the added pleasure of plowing the snow and using rather than. And now they've got these fancy machines that'll do that for you, rather than getting a snow shovel.
When I came out with this book, one of my good friends, Tim Ames, I'm an EMT, he's a firefighter. He said, I won't say what the word is, like this one's get off your ass and mow the grass. He said, you need to do a follow-up that says, don't be a blank, shovel the snow. So you can work backwards as to what word rhymes with snow. Don't be a shovel the snow. I haven't written that book yet, but that would be so one of the interesting things in this book, I got to tell you, I took this very seriously when I wrote this book. I trained for a half marathon. I ran a half marathon, and the only training I did was mowing the grass for the half marathon.
You must
Now
have had a
mine,
big lawn.
I was going to say it was 2 acres of mowing to get ready for the marathon. But my spouse and I did an experiment because we had a riding lawnmower, and we did an experiment. We marked out the property, like this, 80 by 80 square, and was equidistant from the garage, and we said ready, set, go. So we started the timer, and we both went off, and he went out with the riding mower to do his 80 by 80 square, and I went out with my push mower to do the 80 by 80 square, because you think that riding lawnmowers are going to save you time. Didn't save you time. I mean, it saved you a teeny amount of time, but in comparison, I burnt off like 10 times as many calories as he did sitting on the riding lawnmower drinking a Mountain Dew.
Well, and that's the other thing is a lot of people will have an adult beverage while they're driving their they're not particularly going very straight, but but so 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 what I got to ask you, because you've written all these books on so many different topics, do you get a wild hair and then you just decide you're going to write about this topic and then you research it and do it?
That is it. That is it. That's why, I write, I was working on my website and trying to come up with like WordPress was saying, come up with a theme. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what that is. It's, I have these diatribes, unique perspectives, and no drivel. Like there's no, in fact, a friend Tony Strange sent me a message after I posted that stuff. He says, really? Zero drivel? No drivel? I'm like, yes, there's no drivel at all. That's my goal. But, big diatribes. So that's exactly it. I get a hair across, and I'm like, I got to speak up about this. And I've got a long list of things that I've got to hair across.
Now, I got to ask you, because you're a very you're a very opinionated guy and you've got a lot to say. Why aren't you doing a podcast?
I would, but you know what? I'm too busy writing books.
Well, I appreciate your contribution to society, because I think your writing is terrific, and all the subject matter that you do is really cool. And you've sold a bunch of books in your lifetime, haven't you?
I have sold a bunch of books in my lifetime. In fact, I have to tell you that if you have a message to get out there, this is for you, Kevin, or any of your listeners or viewers. If you have a message to get out there and you're like, I don't know what I just can't. Don't let that stop you. Sit down, write till your heart's content, get your stuff out there. There are people out there that will help clean up your writing, make it all pretty, make it all look nice. And, the big monster of Amazon has made it easy to get your books published. And they give you a better rate than you would get with any of the larger booksellers. They give you 70% on your book sales, which is amazing. And they even, all these books that are printed, Amazon's got these ginormous warehousey things around the United States that print out a book at a time and then puts it in an envelope and sends it off to the person. So in the old days, Kevin, if you wrote a book, or viewers, if you wrote a book and you wanted to get a hard copy out there, you would have to buy, 1,000 copies yourself. And then I had a friend once who said, yeah, my book's a million seller. He said, I've got 1 million of them in my cellar. But you can even get
Hold
them.
on. Okay.
You can even get them. This is a hardcover book. Amazon's now doing
Wow.
hardcover books. And so this is one of my latest. We talked about that one too.
So that's really cool. That you can. Now, I was talking to an author recently, and she said that she went through a publisher, and the publisher priced the book at $14.95, and her cut was 87 cents. Is that possible?
Yes, that's why you should not go through the publisher. Go
It's
through
like,
if you price your book above $2.99 on Amazon, you get 70%. And if it's below $2.99 on Amazon, 99 cents to $2.99, you get 35%. So on a 99-cent book, you're going to make 35 cents. And Amazon does that because they want to dominate the ebook field. They want to sell more Kindles. And then if when you move to print, Amazon makes it out and lets you set the price, tells you how much your printing cost is. They take 60, you make 40, because obviously they have the machine to do this, and you print at cost, and then you figure out how much you want to make and then set your price and it's done. It's unbelievably great.
oh, that's awesome. And anymore these days, everybody's saying, you've got to have something that you can give away on your website. So write an ebook. Do something like that you can put behind something on your like and create a membership fee, and then they can have this I don't know.
That stuff's also gimmicky. I have actually 3 of my books for free. I just changed this book, this one, Make Time Your Superhero Power, which is a
Yeah.
pretty thick book. It's now free on Amazon. Because I figure, as I'm writing more books, I'm going to give some away for free, and then that gets the word out there.
Well,
Yeah.
and people like your writing style. And so one of my favorite authors, people think I'm, like stupid for this, but Louis L'Amour,
Mm-hmm.
who was a Western author,
Mm-hmm.
and he wrote a lot of books. They had kind of the same theme, one versus the other, but they were fun to read. And once you get, because of your style, once people get to liking your style, then they pick up all your books because they're fun to read.
Right. Thank you. So
And
I know
that's
I have to say I'm looking at the clock up here because we're live, and I know that we're getting to the top of the hour, and I've been getting no end of grief, Kevin, from from the last time I was on your show,
uh-oh.
and I mean I'm telling you I've gotten emails, and my friends are like, I can't believe you did that. So you turned to me at the end of one of our last conversations, and you said, you've got a minute left to say anything that you want. And
Correct.
I just went on and on and on and on and on and on. And you said, that's the longest minute I've ever experienced in my entire life, or something like that. And that has been, I've got no end of grief from my friends and a few people have listened who are like, yeah, you just can't shut up. You can't even talk in less than a minute. So I'm just mindful of that with 7 minutes left, that, if I don't want to have you say, okay, Scott, you got 60 seconds to say what you want to say. And then you're like pulling me off to the side.
Well, I'm actually prepping you for when I invite you on KKNW 1150 AM in Seattle, because in addition to the podcast, I have a radio show, and so like here I can say, well, we're going to go about an hour, and then if you go long, you go long. There you go long. It's like, and we'll
Shut up.
see it. And I mean, they'll just cut your ass right off, and it's you're done. And so when like so if we go there and I say, Scott, you got a minute, and it gets to about 20 seconds, and Scott, well, Scott, thank you very much. So because it's when they're done because they got another show to do.
Right, right.
So
Click.
so it's
Cut off
that's
in mid sentence.
exactly the way it is. But you're one of those guys that I really enjoy talking to, and you're so versed on so many topics, and you can talk for a long time, and you're very intelligent as well. So I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. I'm trying to get you to come back on the show again. So
Absolutely.
because you really are one of the more fun interviews that I get to do, and God knows I do a lot of these.
You do. You do. Oh,
It's my mission.
it
It's just
is.
what I do.
It is. It is.
But
Heather
if I
Lettuce, clairvoyant.
yep, I got all kinds of you've obviously been on my channel.
Yes. Yes. I have.
So, we talk about all kinds of stuff. So it's very interesting for me. But I want to thank you for coming on again today. And next time I'm going to book you on KKNW and make you toe the line as far as when we get to come on and go off and all that stuff.
Okay, great.
Because I think the Seattle audience would just love you.
Great.
So we're running out of time. Is there anything that you would like to tell our audience now or in the future? Anything about any subject at all, you get to pick.
Boy, another hard topic to say. You know what? I will just say that this guy Scott, the guy that can't tell the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver. He and I are taking a course together on Coursera. Have you ever heard of Coursera?
No.
It's one of these big, they call them MOOCs, like massive online course. And and so we're taking this course together that's pre-recorded, and it's from the University of Michigan on emotional intelligence. And it's really nice. I've done a number of online courses before, everything from the history of Thomas Jefferson to, business planning. And this one's been really great. And it's been really great to do it with a friend that, we can talk about the topics of the course on the phone and share each other pieces. And, it's the message that I would say is just when you think you've learned it all, there's something else that comes along that can push you a little more. And so I'm really grateful that he's doing this course with me and that I'm doing this course with him. And you might see a book in a year on emotional intelligence from G. Scott Graham. I have to come up with a catchy title, right?
Yeah. Well, you've got a bunch of them, and that one I think emotional intelligence is a great topic.
Yeah.
And that would be a lot of fun. I'd also like you to do and to do some research and do your take on like near-death experiences or life after death or something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely have a view on that. Well, that's also in this book. This is Come As You Are.
You've got to be very careful talking with somebody like you because you've written so many books.
Yeah,
you might have already written about that, and I didn't catch it. But no, so that's good. So, anything else you'd like to say before we?
This is great. What a privilege to be with you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir. And we got to do this again because
absolutely,
it's you make for this is. We're going back to the very beginning when we're talking about businesses and the traps you fall into. I really enjoy talking to you. And so my normal self would say, hey, why don't you do more of these and we could be co-hosts and we could do. No, I can't do that anymore. I've been told I'm not allowed to do that. I have to ask permission from my executive producer now before I can do
Yes, I hear that. I'll visit again. We've got more to talk about.
Yes, sir, we do. Well, I'm going to hook you on KKNW, which is a live radio show in the 14th largest media market in the country. We're not quite Boston, but we're close.
Yes, great.
So,
my pleasure.
Thank you. We've been talking again with G. Scott. Go to gscottgraham.com and buy a book, for heaven's sakes. Buy 10. He's got that many.
So, I do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and stay right where you are. Thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of kmmedia.pro. Please visit our website, oddly enough, named kmmedia.pro, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to each other because each other's all we've got. We'll see you next time.